back. I've got another fun episode for y'all. This is episode 33 with my boy Colin Hughes. He's probably the youngest podcast guest we've had on, but he has been finding some really good success with doing direct to agent on market deals. So, Colin, why don't you kind of kick us off here? Tell us how you got into like real estate investing and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Thank you for having me on here, Adam. I'm Colin. I've been in SubTo for actually a little over a year now. I've been doing wholesaling on market for probably 8 months or so. Haven't really had much success until probably the end of September. I got two deals around that time and actually just got two more that we're gonna go through. So yeah, it's very exciting and it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So, what got you interested in sub two, especially at such a young age, right? Like, obviously, when I was 18, they didn't have all that. But, what kind of drew you to that?
Yeah, so my mom actually was the one who kind of introduced me into Sub 2 last it was 2023 summer. She kind of was started following pace and I kind of started watching all that content too. And I was actually a golfer. I was going to go to college golf and maybe see if I could go pro, but this real estate stuff is like something that I'm really interested in. And you know, it's very exciting to learn and there's so much education in sub two and just real estate in general and it just excites me, man. So
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome, especially when you have a parent that not only like believes in the dream, but actually in some ways like introduces you to it.
totally, my mom, very thankful for her. Now I'm kind of, she helps me. She's a doctor. She's trying to get into real estate more herself, but like this stuff I found a few partners that I can really rely on, and that's the whole point of sub two. And you need to find people you can rely on, especially when you first start to like you need help. Like no one can do a business by themselves, and if you think you can, you're competing against other teams and you can't beat everyone by yourself. You can't.
No, you're only so good by yourself, you know. And I think, like you said, that's really important. We were talking about that just off recording, that, that's one of the things that you feel like is instrumental in how you've gotten here, where you're talking about deal number 4 or 5 was just having good partnerships, like your partner Gordon.
100%, man. It's so important. Like, I mean, if I couldn't do this all myself, I'll tell you that. Like, you can't do everything alone. So like we have a dispo partner and I do acquisitions with Gordon, but I mean, wholesaling is really hard. And I know like all these gurus on YouTube and TikTok and everything try to make it seem like it's easy, but it's hard. Any business you do is very hard. So I think it's all about who you find and who you can work with. And if you're like likable, like I feel like I'm a pretty likable guy and I got a lot of good partners I can work with, you're going to be successful. So it's all about who you know. In this business, it's all about who you know. It's very, very important.
Well, and you'll probably agree with this, but I've seen this from other people that did try wholesaling on their own. They're trying to carry the football so far. They're trying to run the whole 100 yards as opposed to just getting first downs and handing off that baton or, making that next pass to the next teammate. So I find that's where a lot of them fumble is because they are doing the leads, the closing, and dispo. They have to basically set everything else down to pick up on one deal versus another.
Totally. You can't do everything by yourself. Like to anyone who wants to start wholesaling, I would just say find a team, find someone who can help you, who's a closer, and just get started and work every day and just learn something new every day. Like that's what I did. I mean, I started 8, 9 months ago doing wholesaling on market, and for the first couple months, I had no clue what I was doing. I had to rely on other people to help me, improve. But now I'm at the point where I'm just getting deals now. So it's all about just working every day, and just keep working hard every day. It's all it is working hard and showing up. If you do that, I mean, your chances of success increase by probably like, what, 80, 90% if you just show up every day. Simple.
Well, it's showing up and it's also the consistency and the focus, right? Like you can show up for 90 days, but if you show up with half-ass focus and you're not putting in real work, you're not going to get it. But let's talk about your partnership with Gordon because it sounds like I said, there's a lot of new people that will watch this that always go back and watch the recordings. So let's say that somebody's brand new to Sub 2. If I'm brand new to Sub 2, I'm trying to find somebody like my Gordon or my partner, somebody that maybe has a little bit more experience. How did you guys connect?
Yeah, so actually, so when I joined SubTo with my mom, like 2023, we both joined at the same time. She started joining like the newbie Zooms. And that's how like she got introduced to Gordon. And then 6 or 7 months later, Gordon was like my mom told him about me. Like I'm a young kid trying to get into real estate. And Gordon started doing Zooms with the Bash Bros every, I think, Thursday. And I started joining it. And I just, I went every single week and they started noticing me that I was there. And then from there, I started connecting with Gordon specifically, and that's how I got jump started. So anyone who wants to get started, you just got to put your name out there. It's simple. If you put your name out there and you're willing to work and focus, like you said earlier, you'll be successful. It might take a week, a month, a year, but you have to show up and do the work. And the hardest part, like especially if you like are introverted and you don't want to be in front of a lot of people, you have to do that. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable if you want success. And that's what it takes.
Oh, totally. And I always tell people too, like show up to the family nights, like do what Pace is telling you to do. A lot of times he's giving advice and he's teaching you how to network with other people. And a lot of those family nights are where I made some of the best friends I have in Sub 2 now.
Oh yeah. 100%. Like I talk to Gordon every day. I mean, I talk to Ken. There's a lot of partners. It's not just me and Gordon. There's a lot of other partners that help us. And, I built genuine friendships with all these people. And they're very cool people. Like a lot of people in the community who are trying to work hard, they want to meet new friends too. Like, and I think, would you rather hang out with someone who's working hard to be successful or someone who's out drinking every night? You know what I mean? Like it's pretty simple. Like I'm in college, so I see it all the time. All these kids wasting their lives going out to Northgate all the time, right? And versus like me, who's working. I know a lot of kids like me who are working, and that's who you got to surround yourself with. You can't be surrounding yourself with people who are putting you down or doing things you shouldn't do.
So let's talk about that too. You said there's a bunch of different partners. It's obviously not just you and Gordon. Usually responsibilities are a little bit easier to sort out if it's just two of you. But how did you guys go about figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are so you could really create a flow?
Totally. Yeah. So Gordon's been in like he was a real estate agent for about 10 years. So he has a lot of experience in like the real estate field. Then he actually moved to LA, and then recently, I think last year, he moved to Phoenix, like where all the SubTo people are now. But he's a great closer, and he's probably the best I think I've ever seen in SubTo. So I'm just thankful I'm working with him. But I started only like 8, 9 months ago. So for me, what I would do is I would just cold call. We have a lead generator. Shad's kind of runs that, but he pretty much gives us good leads that make sense numbers wise. And I would just call them up and see if it's a good fit. And if it does, I'll pass it to Gordon. And if he can close it, he'll pass it to Dom. So it's a whole like system. So that's very, very important. You need a good system and a good flow.
Yeah, well, and leads are the most important part, right? Like if you have no leads, you have no business. You can't close anything if you don't have leads coming in.
Totally. I
What
I
what
found
are
it
some of the things that y'all are doing to not only get your leads but qualify them?
to qual. Yeah, so we have a buy box pretty much. So for pretty much SubTo, you want low equity, right? You want a low interest rate.
Hmm.
And I mean, those are pretty much the two main things. You got to make sure it's not like an adjustable rate. You got to make sure it's like a fixed rate, right? You don't want it to adjust.
Hmm.
Um, but like those are like the two main things. Like that's all it is. And if like we have an integrator Shad who brings the good ones to us, he has a whole system. It's no excuses. They actually Zoom every Wednesday. But it's literally a whole integration system, and they pull leads for me. So I get those leads. These are typically hot leads. So when I'm calling the agent, I'm running all the numbers up with them and just making sure it's a good fit. And if the numbers are correct and they're interested in a SubTo deal, then I'll pass it on to Gordon. That's really all it is. It's simple. And the thing I like about this, it's a repetition. Like I've seen all these different situations. It's all a repetition. Like it's the same thing over and over again.
And that's another big question we get a lot oftentimes is like, but I'm a visionary. How do I find an integrator? So how did you guys find that partner for your team?
Yeah. So Gordon, kind of when Gordon started doing his own thing, I think he found Shad in the summer and they started hosting him, TJ and Shad started hosting weekly Zooms. It's every Wednesday, like I think 10. But team at Shaw. Then I kind of got introduced to Shaw through Gordon, and then I kind of joined with all of them. And pretty much from there, I had so much more success because before I was pulling my own leads, I had to do all this extra stuff that just takes a lot of time. But now I can just hop on my computer, go on my CRM, which we have, and I have all my leads. I get new ones like all the time, and they're qualified leads, so they make sense. So organization is very important. So you need like a lot of partners who can help you with that, and Shad's a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, because like I said, I'm an integrator, so I'm well, and I know a lot of the integrators in sub too. But I always get that question, so I think it's interesting to ask, especially because not everybody knows how to work with integrators, and it sounds like you guys have a pretty decent flow.
Oh yeah.
So y'all aren't just throwing work at them like, here, produce a result, make magic happen.
Totally. Everyone has a specific job to do, and then we all do it. That's how you have a successful company and you build this. Everyone has a little job and everyone does it. Shad's done a great job and Gordon's done a great job. And I think I've done a pretty good job as well. So it's all a matter of consistency and showing up and doing what needs to be done every day. And I think everyone on the team is doing that so far, and it's great to see it. And we've had a lot of success so far. So it's great, man.
Yeah, so he pulls the leads, you call the leads, Gordon closes the leads, and then y'all have somebody else to dispose them.
Yeah, Dom, and he has another partner as well, but most of my deals have gone dispoed by Dom. But he's a great dispo. He's found tons of good qualified buyers because before we had Dom, it was Gordon that was kind of doing dispoing by himself, and it's hard because if he's doing acquisitions and he's closing, it's really hard to also have the time to find a qualified buyer too. You know what I mean? So you kind of
Yep, they're
also
equally as tedious.
totally like they're a little different, but like they're hard in their own ways for sure.
They're different, but they're equally a time suck, like calling leads and closing leads is just as difficult as it is calling buyers and closing buyers.
Yeah, because most of the buyers you call, most of them aren't like what you're looking for. I'm not into the displaying field, but I hear it all the time. Like 80% of the buyers you find aren't even like what you want to work with. You know what I mean? So you really got to make sure on the dispo and you find a good legitimate buyer. That's tough. It's a lot tougher than people think, I think. So
Oh, definitely. Building the right buyers list and having an idea, and like you were saying earlier, about staying organized and understanding what their buy boxes are. Because if you're just throwing them properties that they're not even interested in, you're going to burn those bridges. We see that a lot too. Like I get thrown properties all the time. We were talking off recording about how somebody cold called me out of the SubTo director and was like, "Are you buying properties in Arkansas?" Like, no, no, I'm not even buying single families, bro. Like, we're only looking at commercial properties. Like, we're looking at RV parks. Like, I don't know where you got this from.
100%. That's why distilling partners are very, very important. They solve the end of the puzzle, right? They're the ones fix. I mean, the acquisitions is hard enough. Like I'm telling you, like I call these people, like a lot of these people, we've done deals with. I've talked to them like 50 times. Like it's insane, to get one
Yeah,
deal. But that's what it takes.
yeah,
That's business. That's what it takes.
yeah. It's a ton of touch points, and most people don't realize that even in small business, it's still like 7 to 10 touches before you close out on like a $200 ticket. You know, so think about this: like a house is the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. Of course, it's going to be more than 10 touches to get somebody to close on something.
For sure. The last deal he got in New Orleans, I mean, there was one deal that he gave me that it was like a really high interest rate, so we didn't really like it much. But we sent an offer out, they backed out of it, they didn't want to do it. Then he sent me another one, and I think it's going to go through now. But it's like, I mean, I could scroll through my CRM text messages with him, dude. 60, 70, 80 plus. Like it was insane. So many touch points, but that's what it takes. If you want to be successful in this type of business, you have to be willing to talk to people and you have to be willing to reach out all the time, like a crazy amount of times.
Yeah, and you just can't gaslight yourself out of doing that work because, like you said, that's what's required.
100%. 100%.
So, what did you do to get over those mental hurdles? Because I feel like that's something that we see in all new wholesalers, right? They're like, "Oh, I don't want to call them too much. I don't want to bug them," or they said they're going to do this. I believe them. What did you do to kind of get yourself into the right mindset of wholesaling?
I'm not gonna lie to you, it's very tough. You have to Like I definitely do not feel like calling realtors every single day. It's not, I don't, some days I do and some days I don't, but I talk to them every day no matter what, like I'll call, I mean, even if I never talk to them, these are straight cold calls, but you have to get that hurdle out of your head and like it's worth it at the end, I feel like. If you want to build a successful company, you have to do things that are uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people are kind of scared and they're like, oh, it's risky. I don't want to get, I don't want someone to yell at me or tell me to F off, like, and for me, that's happened to me all the time, but you have to be willing to fail. You have to be accepting that if you fail, okay, I'm going to learn from it. And then how can I fix it for the next time? And that happened to me, dude, for probably 7 months straight. No deals, no money, 7 months, 6 months, right? And then
Yeah.
now making money and now look at me. So it's really tough. I will say that. But if you're willing to fail and accepting the failure and learning from that failure, you're going to be successful. I don't care what it is. You have to be willing to, learn from your mistakes. So that's what I did. And that's why I'm here now.
Yeah, because like you said, you put in the work and you just kept going and going and going, and that's what it takes. It's a grind, and I'm sure once you get that first deal done, that probably was a huge weight off your shoulders too.
Oh yeah, man. Like once that check hit my bank account, like things really changed. Like that's what Gordon was telling me. Like, bro, once you hit that first deal and that money goes into the bank account, things change. I didn't really believe him, but once you see that money in your bank account, things really do change. Like, and then another one comes, and then another one, and then you're making more and more money, and it's like, wow, it's crazy
Uh,
how things like momentum really is a thing. Like it's
I was
crazy.
gonna say it probably doesn't have to be a huge amount of money either, huh? It probably could be a grand, 2 grand, 3 grand. If you get that hit in your bank account for the first time, you're like, oh shit, wait, I didn't have to work, a month to get this.
100%. Yep. I woke up, got told a check. I'm like, dang, that's money. How much I'll take it. And then it adds up. And it's like, it's great. I just didn't believe it until I saw it in my bank account. And then once you see it, you're like, wow, this is legit. This is a legitimate business we're building. I didn't realize that until that money came in my account. So it's tough. It's a tough grind. And for me, I got past the hurdle, like the hardest part of not getting any money. But once now I'm past that point, and I'm making money. But I think it's like 95% of wholesalers fail. They don't make any money. And it's because they give up. And it's because they're scared of being uncomfortable. And if you can just get through those hurdles, I'm telling you, like success is coming your way. 100%.
Bro, it's most agents too. It's like it's just most people in real estate, they don't have the patience or the perseverance to see it out, and then they just give up.
100%. That's why businesses fail a lot of the time, especially in the real estate industry.
So take us through that first deal. What did that look like? You're calling agents, you get one, they express some level of interest. You're like, hey, here's an offer, present it. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, her name was Antonia. The address was a property in San Antonio. Like I think it was 7333 Viridian. I remember the address in my head still. But I called her. It was probably a 5 minute call. Pretty much the first thing she told me, which this is the first time I've experienced this since starting, she was like, "Oh, we're interested in a creative finance offer." And I was like, "Oh, great." Like I was not expecting that. That's the first time I've heard that. So I just asked her for the interest rate, the current balance, and the PITI. And I got those numbers. I passed over to my partner, Gordon, and it was a good deal. I think the interest rate was like 3%. So for a sub 2 deal, that's what you're looking for. So he sent that offer out. It took like a month. Like it was a long period because there were a lot of sub 2 offers they received, but we kind of had to show that we're the most legitimate because we've done business in San Antonio before. And then we kind of showed her our title company that we work with, and Gordon's done a lot of work with the patent title company, so we have a good relationship with them. So we kind of showed her that, and then once she saw that, she was like, "Oh yeah, we're choosing y'all. Like y'all are the most legitimate here." So that's kind of what happened. And then I only talked for 5 minutes, and that's all I did for the whole deal. But I've had other deals where I've talked to people like 30, 40, 50 times. But in this case, it was only one call, and they needed to sell and I was like, Gordon, like send an offer out quickly. We got to get this one done. And that's what happened.
So what I liked about what you just said is it wasn't even about your offer. They were flooded with sub 2 offers. Like you could have had the best, the worst, or the middle of the pack, but either way, you built the confidence to show them that you're the most credible buyer, which is far more important than having the best offer.
100%. Like what Gordon kind of taught me to say was, we're different than all these YouTube kids who are trying to get their first deal. That's that's literally what I tell them. And you have to separate yourselves from the people who are beginners. You have to, because a lot of these people on TikTok and YouTube, they're starting and they don't have the experience that I have or that you have. So you have to separate yourself. And then once that real estate agent sees that, they're going to trust you more and they're going to be willing to work with you more. And hopefully I can do more deals with her. We do the San Antonio area all the time. So I'm hoping soon she has some more potential creative finance properties and she sends them our way. You know, hopefully it happens.
That's
We'll see.
that's gonna be your new trademark. We're not like those YouTube kids.
Yeah, Gordon taught me that. And I say it all the time. I'm telling you,
It's
it works. It works.
it's better than leaving the faucets on when you rob a house like Home Alone. Better
Yeah.
better be known for, we're not like those YouTube kids.
I'm telling you,
Little
it works. It's insane how that works, but it does.
Well, like I said, you have to present yourself as the most credible buyer, and ultimately that's what they're buying, right? Is their confidence that you instill in them. You could offer them 250 on a house, I could offer them 300, but even if they take the 300, guess what? There's no guarantee I'm going to close.
It's exactly what I would tell them. 100%. Like, that's a really high offer, but I don't know if they can close. I can guarantee you I can close, you know, because we have
Yep.
the way we work, we get our dispo partner before we even get the deal under contract. We find out we have a buyer locked up already. That's how our business works. So literally, we show them the property beforehand. Like they look at the numbers, we run the numbers up. We literally have the buyer on lock before we even have the deal under contract. And that's how our business works. And that's why it's working.
Yeah, so you guys go very much preemptive. You're not just getting contracts and falling out of contracts. If you get that contract, like that contract is going through.
I feel like a lot of wholesalers try to do acquisitions first. They did this is all alone. They do acquisitions first and they try to dispo. But I think the way you should do it is you need to find some buyers and see what they want first. Then you find the properties that fit that criteria and then you call them. People work backwards. And I think like the way that works, I think that's the best way to do it. Like you got to find the buyer and then from there you see what they want and then you can call and see if you can get something happening.
Well, I think that the way they're trying to read it from left to right, and it makes sense that way, right? Like lead, acquisition, contract, close, or dispo. Just like they see that same thing with raising capital. They're like, all right, if I, find PMLs that are willing to lend this much money, I can find a deal that fits that. But what they don't realize is that both work in reverse and are preemptive. You'll always find money if you have a good deal, and you'll always find a good deal if you have a good buyer.
You said it right there. You're 100% right. That's exactly the way we do our business. And before we kind of didn't do that as much. And once we kind of made that switch, it definitely helped. You need to have the buyers on lock before you even get the deal. Because once you get the deal and they see it's a really good deal, they're gonna want it right away. Because like right now, it's like what, December? So for taxes and stuff like that, it's people are buying a ton right now. And people are having trouble selling their houses. So that's when we come in because especially the San Antonio market, it's a slow market right now, and it's working. So we have a lot of buyers in San Antonio that we have locked up, and we have all these deals that are really good deals, super low entry fee, low interest rate, and they're cash flowing tons of money. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Well, like you said, we're in the slow season, especially for the realtors. The realtors are busy with their holiday parties and um their family events and whatever. But like you said, there's investors out there and they need the depreciation. They need the tax benefits. They need a 1031 right now. And so if you can come with a credible buyer and they need the money, maybe for whatever reason, maybe their lease is up, maybe they just need to dump this house before the end of the year, you at that point are the most credible source for a buyer.
Exactly. And then once you build that trust, they keep coming in. That's like all business is just getting people to trust you. And then, if they trust you and you can give them something, it's a winning relationship. We get paid and we're giving them an asset. It's how it works. And that's how you're successful. A lot of these, I call them jokers, these joker wholesalers, I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing, but they want to do it all by themselves or they're taking a step in the wrong direction. And you need a team. That's like why we have this team and it's working. You can't do everything by yourself. It's just too hard. And there's not enough time in the day to do everything you need to do to become successful in the business.
Yeah. So you're not saying they don't know what they're doing, but also AKA they don't know what they're doing.
They try to be nice about it, but like I just see it all the time. And I'm not trying to say it to be mean, but people is like this is a real life situation. People like they'll get a contract for way too high of a price and they can't find a buyer, and it messes up the people's lives who are living in a house currently. They need to sell the house, and you're giving them false hope. And I think that's kind of why I say it, not trying to be like a mean person or anything, but it's true. Like these are real life situations, and we're generally trying to help people. And I think a lot of those wholesalers they'll get a contract for way too high and they have trouble finding a buyer. And then these people who live in the houses are in jeopardy. They need help. They need to sell the house and they can't because this situation, you know? So it's
Yeah.
I see it all the time.
Well, that and then once you lock it up for too high, the only it only leaves you two options. It's either a homestead buyer, if you know one, or a novation, which is just a roundabout way to get to a homestead buyer anyway. Because
Yep.
novation is just you putting it on the market, you're just remarketing it and hoping to make a little bit of a spread by selling it at retail.
And it's a hope. That's not a guarantee, right? So I mean, it's just hard. I see it. It sucks, and that's why I'm trying to genuinely help. Like I know a lot of people don't like the SubTo aspect where it's like, oh, my name's on the mortgage still, but if you can present a deed of trust, present a promissory note, show them how they're protected, and then you can actually show them how you can help them, it's a winning situation. Um, I see it all the time, though. All these people will hit me up and like, "Oh, can you help me dispo this?" I don't do dispoing, but I know a lot of guys who are trying to wholesale, and they'll send me something like, "Oh, do you know any buyers?" Because the SubTo private Facebook group, right? And I'm like, I look at the comps, I look at the ARV, and I'm like, dude, this you locked this up for way too high. It's not even remotely
Mhm.
close. It's $50,000 too high for a cash. Like, what are you doing? And then you're putting the person's life, like you're messing up their situation. I just, it sucks. I see it, like I said earlier, all the time. It happens all the time, especially with newer wholesalers. They think you can just get into this business, but it takes a lot more than just hopping in. You have to learn, you have to meet people. It takes a lot more than just, oh, call people right now. You need a lot more than just that.
Yeah, well, and like you said, especially when you get that property under contract, you have exclusivity now with that seller, right? So whatever timeline that seller's on, if it's urgent to them and it's not urgent to you, then you're just messing them.
Exactly. And I think that's why we have a winning business motto because we're generally trying to like help people get out of that situation, but also help a buyer get a cash flowing asset. So it sucks, man. I just it's really bad. Like I love wholesaling. It's great, but I feel like before you start, you really need to learn how to find the right price to buy it at and not give false promises or false hope. I think that happens so much, and like people don't understand this is a real life situation. People's like they have all these issues, and if you're not here to solve them, like that's you're not going to be successful in this business. You really need to help find the pain point and help solve that pain point. And I think a lot of wholesalers just don't do that, and they don't understand like how to find that.
Do you guys have a formula that you use for your offers and LOIs?
Um, Typically, like I wouldn't say necessarily a formula, but 10%, pretty much what we do is it's 10% of the sale price. So if it's a property for $250,000 on market, I'm gonna say it's low equity. 25,000 is about the price that an investor would pay. We want to make a $10,000 split. So that means the most amount of money we could put in between the real estate agent and the seller is 15,000. So that little spread is the money we make for profit. So I mean, so that's why we got to find the balance, the interest rate. That's why all those factors are important. But if like on a full price, like we're mimicking a full price offer. That's the way stuff doers. We're
Mhm.
mimicking that full price offer, and we're putting the same amount of money in that seller's pocket if we can. Sometimes we'll do a seller carry, but if we can, that's what we do. So if it was, let's say 7,500 to the agent, 7,500 to the seller, and that's 15K, and then we find a buyer that wants for 25K, which they will. 10% of the sales price is typically what they're looking for. That $10,000 split we make. That's simply, I mean, I wouldn't say the formula, but that's what we always look for. And always before I call, I run up the numbers, see if it's a potential fit. 'Cause if it's not a potential fit, I'll just text the agent and I'll be like, hey, we're looking for properties in the area. I know a lot of buyers here. Let me know if you have anything. I'll send them like I want a 3 bed, 2 bath, at least like a 1,500 square foot house and whatnot. No HOA preferably, like all that stuff I'll send them. But I wouldn't say a formula we have, but it's pretty much the same thing every time. No, the entry fee has to be less than 10% of the sales price. That's really what we're looking for.
Yeah, and like you said, you're trying to hit your number too, which is at $10,000 somewhere in that spread of the entry fee.
Exactly. If it's a little less, it's okay, but obviously we're aiming for higher than that. Like, look, a deal is better than no deal. So if it's a little less than that and it's still a deal, we'll take our money and it will keep going. We'll move forward.
Oh yeah, that's really good, man. So it sounds like you guys have it kind of figured out. And like you said too, with low equity, you are usually just mimicking the you're mimicking the asking price. A lot of people will try to go for 70% of value or whatever, but those deals are usually harder to find and they have to be cash deals and they usually have to be much higher equity.
Well, yeah, and in that case, if it's a low equity property, you probably can't even throw out 70% cash because they'll be losing money on the sale, right? If it's below the balance, you're going to be losing money. And that's why a lot of these wholesalers like to start with cash because most of them don't even understand what sub-2 is. They just want to do cash because that's the way they're like wired. They think cash is the only
Mhm.
way, but it's not. And I think sub-2 is a great way to like, if you mimic a full price offer and you give and the property can't sell and you're giving the person the same amount of money they would make on a full price offer, I mean, that's a winning situation. Like, especially I see it all the time. The military people here, they live here for 2 years and they sell the house, try selling the house. They can't sell it because, and it is like what the balance is pretty high because they've only owned it for 1 or 2 years. And that's what we deal with all the time. And then I have to come in, help that situation, help them solve that situation.
Is that pretty much what you guys do almost exclusively since you said you're working with a lot of low equities is mimic the asking price and then come in for that 10% or less entry fee?
That's the formula. But if we can't, like, we'll throw in a seller carry. Sometimes that happens. We'll give them like I don't know, like a five, like usually like a 10-year balloon. 5 years too short. Like 10-year balloon. We'll give them like a couple $100 a month, and then so it still is mimicking a full price offer no matter what, but just not all up front.
Yeah. And you do that if it's higher equity, like a hybridish.
Yeah, we actually one of the ones we found in New Orleans is like 50% equity, but it's a killer deal because it's an SBA loan, a business loan. So the interest rate was 1.5%. It's probably the best deal we've ever found. Me and Gordon are running the numbers up. It cash flows like as a STR, like $5,000 a month. It's an
Yeah.
unbelievable deal, and the cash on cash returns 100%. I mean, it's unbelievable. But so we can really mark that. That one it was like $185,000 house, but we can mark that price up to a buyer probably a lot more than the 10% just because the cash on cash return is so high. So it just depends on the situation.
Well, New Orleans being my market too, though, I would say STR is not the safest exit strategy just because they're always moving around the regulations as to what's allowed, what's not allowed. Like you could come in, that property could work as an Airbnb today, and then next year they yank it. Nope, not allowed. Can't get the permit.
Happens all the time. But even as an LTR, I think it's like over $1,000 a month cash flow. So I mean, there's a lot of exit strategies or a midterm rental. It's probably making a little bit more than 1,000. But I think I mean, still, it's hard sometimes if it doesn't cash flow. But if you can structure it in a way that favors you and it could work, any deals, there's so many deals out there. You just got to structure it in the correct way.
Well, to your point, that's why most people do go for those ones that cash flow well as LTRs. They're just getting harder and harder to find because there's more low equity, high interest rates out there.
Yeah, especially like, I mean, like in 2021 is when everyone was buying. That was like what a killer time to, buy properties because the rates were like really low, but now they're like what 6%, 6.25. So you can structure it a 6% interest rate in a way that could work, but we try to avoid those. Like usually under 4.5% is what we're looking for because not really many buyers will want to buy a single family around 6%. That's just way too high. You can get a mortgage out there for 6% interest rate, so why would you want to do a sub-2 for that?
Right. Yeah, that's common. We're seeing them a lot of times at like five and above, five, 5.25, like you said, six. I saw one at like eight, and I was like, bro, you could get a DSCR for eight.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with multifamily properties, it's a little less important interest rate, but with a single family, that's like one of the main three things the buyers are looking for is interest rate. It's very important. So I mean, it depends on like what you're trying to wholesale, but if it's a single family home, they want a low interest rate, pretty much under. I mean, if you can get, you can do low 5%, but even that's kind of cutting it close, if I'm being honest.
Dude, that 8 was on a single. That wasn't a multi.
Yeah, yeah,
That
that's
that was that was the wild part. I was like, bro, you might as well just get a DSCR for that. Like
was the entry
you
fee
could
like, was it like a low entry fee for that? Because I mean, you can do it if it's a low enough, but if it's not low enough, bro, no one's gonna. That's hard. 8%. That's freaking crazy, dude. I'm not gonna lie, that's crazy.
yeah, I think it was a relatively low entry fee, but not low enough to make it work because I doubt they dispoed that deal.
Yeah, I agree with that. Probably not.
They probably just fell out of contract, just like
I don't know.
everybody else.
I just don't know why people like try to find like 8%. Like you should know beforehand, like get out of that deal. I would run from that deal. 8%, I'm running away from that. Like I need something under 5% and hopefully less than 4%, preferably. And I mean, we've had some that are like 6, 10%, but it just makes it so much harder to dispo. And like I'm trying to make my job easy for the closer, and the closer's trying to make his job easy for the dispo. So if you're trying to make it harder on someone, it just makes the whole situation harder, and then no one's gonna make money, you know?
I
So
don't think anybody makes it intentionally harder, but I do think that they just try to force the deal. Like they get desperate. They're like, I haven't gotten a deal yet, or I haven't gotten a deal in a long time. Because you see that a lot too, right? It's like if you're trying to ask a girl out, you can't just be like, go on a date with me, go on a date with me, go on a date with me. If you try to force it, she's gonna run away.
yeah,
And
yeah,
likewise, if you're trying to force the deal, the money's gonna run away from you too.
100%. Like there's steps to it. There's step one, you got to build a relationship, ask about the condition. There's all these things I always go through with them, ask for the rental rates in the area, just trying to see the pain. I'm trying to solve that pain. And that's once I can kind of get that pain and find it, then I really use that and try to solve their problem. That's all it is, just solve people's problems. If you solve people's problems, you're going to make money.
Why don't you give us some examples of some of the pain points you've run into on deals you've done so far?
Totally, yeah. I'll say about a VA one. All the time we do a lot of VAs, military stuff because people get deployed every few years. So they'll buy a house, they'll live there for 2 years, and they have to leave. So it usually takes a property like more than like 1 or 2 years to appreciate a lot. So the problem with these, so I'll say there's a house for $300,000. They bought it for $300,000, and they're trying to sell for 305, 310, but the balance is like 290 because they have only owned the property for 1 or 2 years. So this is why where I come in, I'm like, you're losing money on a full price offer. I'll come in, I'll put a few grand in your pocket. I'll pay the agent's commission, I'll pay the closing costs and the potential seller concessions. That's a pain point. If you're losing money on a property at that full price, that's a big pain. You want to make some money from the house, right? So that's when I come in. I deal with that all the time, and those are the best properties for us because we can come in with a few $1,000 and we're paying the commission, we're paying the closing costs, and the seller is happy because they're getting a few bucks in their pocket and they're moving on with their lives.
Oh yes, that's a big one for y'all right now is mostly well, I guess that makes sense since it's low equity, right? They're gonna lose money at closing.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest. You have some other cases where they have to sell the house, their pre-foreclosure's coming, they're in a lot of arrears, they need someone to help pay them. There are some situations too where they can't sell the property, the market's slow, and they want to move on with their lives, but they can't sell it. So they'll do a sub too. It just depends on the situation, but I really try hard to find that pain point on that first phone call. And then every other phone call or text message, I kind of like reiterate to that point and like, look, you're losing money on this full price offer. I understand that you don't want your name on the mortgage, but like we'll put some money in your pocket and we'll solve your problem. And they won't get that from a lot of people. And I will say too, following up with the real estate agents is a big thing. That's how you get deals and continue to get deals. Follow up is so important because if you call them one time and like no, 2 or 3 weeks later, if the property sale has got no traction, has zero traction, and they're like, oh, I'm interested now, that's a potential deal. So I tell a lot of people, like, if you have a good deal, and even though they say no on the first call, 3 or 4 phone calls later, they might agree to it. They might be potentially interested in it.
Yeah, they might. I think one of the other things that you could probably beat out a lot of people on is since you're offering the full asking, you're beating out all these other wholesalers that are throwing out really bad cash offers.
Exactly. There are cases where we do cash, but typically only for like a fix and flip. We don't for a buy and hold option. We don't really do cash. But yeah, like that's how we beat all the other wholesalers out. Like they'll throw like 60% of the asking price. We're mimicking a full price offer. We're giving like the amount of money they make on a full price offer. We're mimicking that. So I think it kind of definitely beats out the competition. I will say that.
Yeah, so no equity, they're losing money on the close. Maybe they're getting really bad offers like 70% cash. That's another pain point you can easily solve. And I had another one I was going to point out that I feel like you've mentioned here, but you know, oh, well, just traction in general, right? Like if they're not selling it, it could very well be worth the asking price, but if they're just in a slow market or whatever, they're not getting traction. You come in and you're like, well, I'm a credible buyer. I'll buy it.
Yep, 100%. That's definitely true. That happens all the time as well. Like, especially in the market we're in right now, it's kind of a slow market, and there's waves. Like there's sometimes hot markets, sometimes slow markets. But I see a lot of properties that they'll be on the market for over 100 days, and I'm like, why haven't it sold? And they're like, oh, no interest yet. No one's really wanted it. So I'm like, okay, what if I give you that full price? And I'm like, oh, I'll take that. But I'm like, if I give you my price, you have to agree to my terms, and then I'll kind of run through that with them. So that's kind of like how I'll go in that. But that happens all the time, like you said, like that price is a fair price point, but the market's slow, and it can't sell. And the people like if it's on market and it's on Zillow or whatever, Redfin, they want to sell the property. It's on there for a reason. And I'm
Yep.
just trying to solve that problem.
So it sounds like your trifecta of problems here is time, money, and value, right? Like time, it's been sitting on the market. Value, they're not getting the offers that they expected to get. Or money, they're maybe not getting quite enough. Like, or, they're not getting close enough to asking, or they're losing money even at closing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest pain point. You'll see some divorces sometimes. That gets kind of messy because divorces are tough because the two spouses hate each other, and having the name on a mortgage is kind of like, I don't know. I'm sure you can get one. I haven't gone one that works out yet, but I'm sure there's definitely ways you can make that work. But you'll see people like moving out of state or for work or military. I see a lot, or even there's losing money on that property if they sell at that full price. So it just depends. But I think the biggest thing for a wholesaler is you have to find that pain. You really have to find that motivation. And once you find it, use it. Use it to your advantage and see if you can solve a problem.
Yeah, divorces sound like that'd be a really messy situation to try to resolve.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't even want to do a SubTo with a divorce just because like that'd be messy. But I've seen a few cases where it works. But I would just personally stay away from that. If I don't know, but there
Yeah,
are if it works, it works. If you can make that deal work and both spouses agree to that deal and they're fine splitting that money up however they want to split it, make it work.
maybe that's a pace level deal, huh?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, let him handle that. That's what he's got a whole team for. They can handle all those messy cleanups.
Yeah, it does happen a lot. Like usually I wouldn't say that's our like the divorces. I've seen it before, but usually it just the seller backs out last minute or something weird happens with the real estate agent. Like I get ghosted all the time from them and you just gotta keep hitting them back up and eventually they'll come. Like a lot of them are against subject to. But I will say like I think subject to in creative finance, it's getting really popular. So it's great for people like us who are using it and we understand it pretty well because it's new and it's emerging. Well, I guess it's been going on for a long time, but it's really like being popular with on market stuff, especially in the economy that we're in right now.
Yeah, and there's some markets that are more investor friendly than others, for sure. Like you're saying, like you call up somebody in Phoenix, they're way more likely to be like, "Yeah, I've heard of Sub 2. We've done a few deals like that, whatever." Whereas you call somebody up in New Orleans, like they may or may not have heard of it. They probably know. Most people in different states call it different things. Like here, they call it bond for deed, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. there's like a land contract, executor. There's all these weird, yeah, 100%. But it's really too, I think, about educating the realtor on how the process works because a lot of them have heard of it from like their friends or other fellow realtors. But I think for me, I understand the process how it works more than the realtors understand it. So I just part of what I do is I have to make them feel comfortable with the type of transaction we're doing, and any questions they have, I can answer it. So I think that's a big thing because the realtor does have a fiduciary duty to take care of their clients. So I think I'm trying to make sure, the client's not in a bad situation and we have a legitimate buyer who's actually going to pay that mortgage on time. So that's kind of the hard part is they're kind of like, oh, we're not comfortable with it. We've gotten a lot of these types of offers, but I got to separate myself from, like I said earlier, the YouTube kids. I got to separate myself from them. And once they kind of see that, they're more willing. So that's kind of what I've done. And I say it all the time. And it's all about, separating yourselves from the others. And that's what we do. And that's it. We've been doing the last few months and we've had success with it. So I mean, realtors, I think, will start to get more and more comfortable with SubTo as time goes. I think I'm actually going to be a realtor as well. Um, but yeah, I think it's very, very important that you give realtors all the answers they ask for because a lot of people don't understand it and they're just like, oh, can I take over payments? And they're like, what's that mean?
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. If you came to me and I know nothing, and you said I just want to take over your payments, I'm think that would automatically throw me into a panic, right? I'm thinking like, what about the insurance? What about the payments? What if you don't make the payments? What if the house is still in my name? Like whose credit does that hurt? You know? Like those are all important questions to be asked and resolved on those calls.
For sure. And, we always provide a deed of trust and a promissory note. A lot of sub people don't always provide that. And we kind of show them how they're protected. But yeah, it happens. It happened a few times to us. Like we'll have buyers that miss a payment and we're like, bro, like get your stuff together. Like we're building a business. We're giving you properties here for a good
Hmm.
price, right? And you're not paying your stuff. So, and then it makes us look bad. So I know like last spring that happened a few times. I know Gordon had a situation with that, but they got it resolved. But like now we really have to dial in and make sure we have good buyers. And this subject to stuff is good and all, but you need to make sure the buyers are legitimate buyers. Like I said earlier, it's very important. But if they're legitimate buyers and they're paying everything on time, it's a great deal for everyone, I think. I think the agent gets their commission, they're happy. The seller gets that mimicking full price offer, they're happy. And then me and Gordon will get paid. The dispo guy gets paid, and the guy who gets the house for tax benefits is happy too. So that's the whole goal of this all. So everyone wins.
Well, I like what you just said there. You said it's a good deal as long as the buyer performs, basically, right? Like you said, it's a win-win-win-win-win. You just have to make sure that you vet your people. And it's the same way with everything, right? Like I have to vet PMLs before we raise capital for any deals. You have to vet buyers. Or honestly, you have to vet the sellers too. You have to make sure that everything the seller's saying is true. There's no secret seconds. There's no um, huge amount of arrears that they're not telling you about, like all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and that's why we always get a seller's disclosure too to like see. But even that, they're not aware of it. There still could be problems with it. They just say they're not aware of it. So you need to get a proper inspection too. The buyer needs to get a proper inspection and make sure everything's okay. Because a lot of people will hide stuff, and that's also bad because they're like, oh, the HVAC's not really functioning. That's another $10,000 right there. That it's added so that's I'm sure that happens all the time, but that's like you said earlier, that's very, very important to make sure they're disclosing everything that they need to disclose.
Yep, I have definitely seen more than one person try to skip inspection periods, and it is not a good idea.
Yeah, you're totally right there.
The ones that always try to skip usually end up being the worst ones to skip on. It's always the ones that have like a roof leak, a plumbing leak, maybe a foundation crack, and they somehow still have the HVAC system going out. And you're like, bro, now you definitely locked this house up for way too fucking high.
Yeah. And that's the problem too with all these wholesalers who do cash. Like typically those properties, It's like maybe a tired landlord pre-foreclosure. The properties are usually not in good shape. They're in terrible shape for the most. I mean, not for the most part, but you'll see it. They're in like there's trash everywhere. It's the whole house a mess. Everything's bad. There's spiders. There's ants. There's always you'll see cats in there sometimes. Like it's nasty, and then they'll lock it up for way too high, and it's like, oh, you can't find a buyer, and now what, right?
That's usually how it goes, man. I had somebody that actually they locked up a property here in New Orleans and they wanted me to help them find a buyer. And I was like, well, luckily for you, I'm going to a meetup tonight that I'm hosting. And they were like, cool. So I go take pictures of it for them, did some boots on the ground work. They Venmo me like $100, whatever. I showed it to a flipper buddy of mine. He's like, bro, that house needs more rehab than the house is worth.
I seen it like I'm in College Station. There's this one realtor I know. He sent me over a property that I don't know the exact price that he locked it up for, but pretty much it was way too high. They owed like 150 on the property, and he got it for way higher than that. And I was like, bro, like this is not gonna work. He said it needs 50 to $60,000 in repairs. That's what he said. I looked at the pictures and the property's like 3,000 square feet. So typically, if it's that big, it needs more than just 50, $60,000, closer to $100,000. And then the buyer sees that and they're like, bro, this is not going to work. And then that contract's, I guarantee you it's not going to go through because I've been in this game long enough to see that. Like, you locked up for $60,000 higher than it should have been. And if you locked it up for $60,000 lower, maybe it could work. But even then, it's still cutting it close. Right. So
Hmm.
see it all the
Yep. Well, and it's important to have those rehab numbers kind of in your head, right? Like everybody has a different idea, and I've seen this with every wholesaler has different ranges they use for like low, medium, and full gut rehabs. Some of them would quote you, I think usually anything 10 to like 35 a square foot on the low side, probably in the mid, like the 40 to the 60 square foot per $40 per square foot. And then anything higher than that is basically a full gut.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, to your point, you can usually look at the pictures, you can figure that out real quick.
Yeah, I sent it over to one of my buddies who's also in SubTo, and I'm like, yo, it was in Houston, so I'm like, yo, he does Houston a lot. He knows a lot of buyers in the Houston area, so I'm like, bro, I'll give this one a look. Let me know what you think. And he's like, what he lock it up for? And I'm like, 215, I think. And he's like, bro, that's so high, like it's not gonna work. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just tell him what you said, like it's his Nick, it's gonna work. And I told the dude I'll help him see if I can find buyers, but it's just like I don't want to be put in that situation where the buyers are like saying no to me and it makes me seem like I'm a newbie at this. Instead
Yep.
of back to him he locked it up too high.
Happens all the time. I've been asked to help with dispos and I've been asked to help with raising. And we actually the thing that I see a lot is similar to what you're talking about with the square footage, right? So they'll do an estimate for like let's call it fixtures, paint, and floors. And they'll come in, they'll say like $30 a square foot or whatever. Well, they have a 5,000 square foot house and they get it for 420, ARV's like 600, and they don't realize that they can only get up to 80% LTV, and now they're at like 84,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
they don't
I
want to
know.
come out of pocket because that extra 4% on a 5,000 square foot house is like 20 grand.
Yeah, and it adds up, and there's always like, oh, this $5,000 on this, and it's like, oh, I'm not making any more money. Like I know one fix and flipper in San Antonio, he literally won't even touch a fix and flip unless there's $100,000 return guaranteed. Like it's insane, and that's how you have to do it. You have to get that really high return, so in case something happens, like you're still making 90 grand, and you're okay. I'm fine with it. But yeah, right. I see it all the time. People just either they don't know what they're doing with running up the numbers or there's something or they lock up the contract too high. It just
Yeah.
happens so much, so much.
Yeah, they don't give themselves that buffer, and if you're doing a flip, even if it only needs minor repairs, you really gotta be at, like, probably 60% of ARV, if not lower than, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And it's hard
It
to sometimes the situation's not good and you're trying to help someone, but at the same time, when it's not a good fit, it just makes you can't make it worse than it already is. Like if you try to like, oh, I can lock this up for this price and it doesn't work, then that person is getting false hope, but then they're in a worse situation than they were previously.
The other thing I've seen, and wholesalers will do this just like people in the commercial space do this. So people in commercial will try to sell you on pro forma, and people in wholesaling will like gaslight themselves, and they will try to argue with what the appraiser is giving them. And this guy was doing that. He's like, "Well, I really think it's worth 650." And it's like, "Well, the appraisal came in at 625. So I don't think your buyer gives a shit about what you think it's worth. I think they care about what the appraiser thinks it's worth."
Mm-hmm. 100%. You're right on, right there. Couldn't agree more. I mean, I see it a lot of time too, like particularly with sellers, like they think their property is worth X and it's like $30,000 more than it's actually worth, you know. And if it fits for a sub two, it does, but typically if it's that high overvalued, it's not going to work.
Yep, we see it a lot too. We're dealing with it now with an RV park. They had it listed at like 900 grand, not realizing, that it's all based off the NOI and the maintenance that they have in there that's deferred. We offered them 650 and they were like, "We'll take that." We walked the property. Guess what? It needs probably an additional 100 to 200 grand.
Mhm.
Like, we don't know. I can't see the utilities. All the utilities are underground, but I know that you got plumbing backed up in your bathhouse. And I know that you got electrical boxes that aren't the code. So, like you said, we got to build in that margin. So when we do go in there and we do buy it and we do the renovations, we're not getting eaten alive.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and it's just hard. Wholesaling is hard, but it's kind of like I feel like you gotta have the education on it before actually jumping right in. Like, you need to learn about how to like what price to get under contract and how to do that. And I'm not really great on the cash side. I don't do cash. Honestly, if you ask me, I have absolutely no clue on how to find a price. Like obviously look at comps and whatnot in ARV, but I do sub two on market. So that's kind of like the one thing that I stick to. And then everything else, like pre-foreclosures, like I've done it in the past, sure, but I've had the most success with on market with direct to agent. So I feel like whatever you have success with, just stick to that one thing.
Yep. And just get the reps in because you'll just get better and better at it. You
Exactly. That's what it takes. Yeah.
you can go on to the next thing when you can do the first thing in your sleep.
Once you get that consistent income, I think sure you can start exploring new ventures and like to a sub two like PMLs, like that's something that's very interesting to me. And but I want to make sure I'm getting this direct to agent on market sub really good. Like I want to consistently get like at least 4 or 5 deals a month at least. And then from there, okay, let's start looking at new business opportunities. But I mean you can't do like everything at once. And I think a lot of people do that. And that's kind of the reason they fail because it's like shiny object syndrome, like the stuff Pace always talks about. You got to just do one thing, find that one thing you kind of like. Once you get good at that, maybe start exploring. But if not, just stick with that one thing and just keep growing.
Do it for at least 90 days and show up and put in real reps, not just one call a day.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 90 days. I mean, it took me like what 200 days to get my first deal, maybe more. I don't know the exact amount, but probably like 200 days, 250 days. It's hard. It's they don't tell you how hard it actually is. You don't really realize it until you're actually there in the process of it. But like the one thing I always preach is like no one's like they're doing a lot of good things in sub two, but no one's coming to save you. No one's gonna do it for you. Like they'll help you, they'll give you a step up on whatever you're doing. Sure, you can find someone to help you with like a PML, private money lender, or you can find a buyer, sure. But in reality, it's all on you. If you want to be successful in a business, any business, you have to do everything and do as much as you can to, make it work.
Yeah, man. Like you said, I mean, 6 months, that's 180 days right there. So 6, 7 months, that's right in that range, like 200 days. But I'm sure you probably did notice too that like the amount of calls you needed to make in order to start building rapport goes down. Like usually that's what I see is as you put in more reps, the KPIs get better.
Oh yeah, you're on there. And like I said earlier, organization's a key thing as well that I didn't have previously. But yeah, my first call was awful. And now I can talk to anyone at any time, anywhere, you know? So before I had like use a script. Now I don't really need a script. I still have one with me, but I don't like need to look at it every call. I know what to say and when to say it. But my first call was horrible. Like I was new. Gordon, my partner, who's making literally six figures a month, he was new at one point. Everyone had a point where they're not good at what they do now. And now they're really good. And everyone's like, oh, how did you get so good? It's not like magic. Like on these Zooms we go on, like we're trying to help these people, and they're like, "Oh, y'all are so good. Like I'm only 19, I'm getting deals." But I'm like, "Why are you getting deals as well? You can do what I'm doing. I'm not like a special person. I'm just a kid who's putting work in and, working hard every day. I'm just working my butt off."
Yeah, man, I'm with you. That's a pet peeve of mine. The ones that are like, well, you're just so good, bro. You're just so special. And it's like, no, man, I'm not. Like, if you did the same work I did, you'd be here too.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's not like it's not impossible. It's like I'm sure we both had our fair share of struggles with the business and stuff, but like it's hard, yes, but it's not that hard. You just gotta show up and focus and do the work. It's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. If you can believe it and you can think it, I think anything's possible. Like seriously, you just gotta
Well,
really.
that, and I think if you just show up and you do the shit that scares you, that's staring you right in the face, because it's usually the one thing you need to do the most, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think people just sometimes they kind of like I'll say like showing up is very important, but they just don't know what it takes. Like for me, like I have to get up super early in the morning. A lot of the guys I know get up really early as well, and I have to work all day, and that's what I do every single day. And is it boring at some points? Yeah, it's definitely a little boring, but that's what it takes. And eventually, when I'm older, I'll be thankful I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'll tell you that. It's when you're young and you're working hard or as hard as I am, it's I can tell you, or any age, and you work for a few years and just put your head down every day, dude, so much can happen and so much things can change your life positively. It's unbelievable. Like the stuff I've done the last 8 months, like my life has changed now. I have literally a whole business now that's going to start generating a lot of money.
Hell yeah, man. And like you said, I'm sure the phone's the heaviest those first couple dials, but after that, like that phone gets a little less heavy and a little less heavy.
It's reps. I've called hundreds and thousands of people, dude. Like seriously, it's hard. Is it suck? Yeah, but anything you do, even like the most fun thing, it gets boring at some point, and you just gotta, ignore that feeling in your head and just work. I don't feel like working every day, but I work every day. I'm sure most people, you can ask any successful person if he feels like working every day, he'll tell you no, but he does it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, most people don't feel like doing the thing that they're doing, but they do it anyway despite that because it's the discipline that gets you where the result that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays. So, like I see it all the time. These people are like, "Oh, it's so cool, you're 19 making deals," but I'm like seriously, it's not that hard. Anyone can do what I'm doing. You just gotta like really put your head down and work. And it sucks because a lot of these people like are working a W-2 or they have a full-time job and they just don't have much time. But even like an hour, 2 hours a day, I'm sure you can get a deal eventually. If you use an hour, call as many people as you can, have like 20, 30 conversations a day, I'm sure you can eventually get a deal. I'm sure.
What are some of the things that you do outside of dials to cultivate that discipline?
Well, I mean, I will say I get up around 5:35 in the morning and I go to the gym. That's something I can do to get my mind off everything. I try to, I watch NFL, watch football, do stuff to get my mind off work when I'm not working. But like during the day when I'm not at school and I'm not like doing or I'm like doing my work, I'm locked in, man. I'll tell you that. Like most of the day I'm locked in doing work. And I think you got to have moments in a few days where like you sit around and do nothing. Like I'll tell you for Thanksgiving, a few days, like 2 days, I just sat on my butt on my bed and was with family and did absolutely nothing, got my mind completely off the work and the grind, and it was great. But now I'm back and I'm ready to work. So you do need those mental breaks. You do. I'm not gonna lie. But if you work really hard, you'll kind of need them less and less, I feel like.
Yeah, well, I think the more you do it and the more you show it, the more you fall in love with the process, and that's what really matters.
Yeah, you can't go to the top. You have to walk up. You can't like there's a mountain, right? The top success and you're at the bottom still. You have to do all the steps. You can't just skip it and go all the way to the top. But I think a lot of people like when I first started, they're like, "Oh, have you gotten a deals yet? Have you made a lot of money yet?" And I'm like, "Bro, no. I'm learning. I'm in love with the process." And these people they fail because they're not in love with the process. I'm still like, just because I have 4 or 5 deals now, I'm still going. I'm not going to be satisfied. Like, is it cool having a couple thousand more bucks in your bank account every check or whatever? Sure. But in reality, if you get satisfied, it's not, I mean, sure, people can be satisfied and have good lives, but the way I look at it is I'm never going to really be too satisfied. I always love to keep grinding and keep working.
Oh yeah, man. Like I said, it's just constantly just showing up, just getting it done. Um, it's never easy to show up with discipline and for yourself, but it's once you put in those reps and you build that routine, you build that habit. I think where I see people struggle the most is they can't seem to divorce loving the process from being tied to the result. Like they're so tied to the result that that's what they're trying to force, and it never happens because they're trying to force it. But if you're just like, I need the money, I need the money, I need the money, well, money's never going to come. But if you're like, I'm going to learn, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, I'm going to do it better than everybody else, the money's going to come as a byproduct.
The process. You have to be, if you want to be successful and be at the very top, you have to be willing to have a lot of hurdles and failures. I failed so many times, dude. I've lost thousands of dollars in checks from deals, and you have to learn from it and you have to keep pushing. And that's literally what I did. And that's why I'm here now. And I think a lot of people, once they fail 1 or 2 times, they just give up. But that's most people, honestly. Like, most businesses fail, like, and a lot of it's in the mindset, I think. And if you're not, being okay with having like one step at a time and slowly improving, then it's just really hard to be successful. You can't just skip your way to the top. Like, more than likely, you're not going to win the lottery, right? Like, you're not just going to get that 20, $30 million check. You have to work towards that, right?
No, and even when you do get to the top, you figure out that there's always another bigger mountain. So then you got to climb back down and climb the next mountain. And then you got to climb back down and climb the next mountain. Like I came from small business and I've been in small business for actually since I was about your age, since for the last like 13 years. And I sold everything from $10 tickets up to $1,000 tickets, a couple $1,000 tickets. Like it's not easy, but you show up, you put in the work, you do the sales, you do the marketing, you do the fulfillment, the operations, and you just make it happen. And like I said, being in small business through COVID was not fun. Like, not at all. But we made it work.
Yeah. Like, the government will throw stuff at you, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you gotta figure a way around it. You gotta figure something around it, because things happen all the time, like real life events, COVID, like you said earlier. Like, it's a big, big thing that I know a guy lost like 5 to 7 businesses from COVID. He lost almost everything. And he's up now, like he's doing great now, but it's hard. Things happen, life happens. But if you're willing to just learn from it and keep pushing. I mean, good things come. Good things will come.
Yeah, man. So what's one of those things that you would kind of tell people, especially if they're new investors, they're looking to maybe they just joined SubTo or they're looking to become a wholesaler? What's some advice you would give them?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, like, if you're in SubTo and you really paid $10,000 to be here, that's a huge investment. So use it to your advantage. You have all the videos, all the Zooms. There's so much education in like the vault. It's unbelievable. Like, honestly, I haven't gone through everything yet because I'm just doing the on market stuff. I found what I'm good at, but there's so many sources of education in the vault, and you connect with people. If you're in the private Facebook group, you meet other people who are in the same path that you're trying to go on. And the Zooms, there's so many ways to get connected people and learn. I think you got to put yourself out there. If you put yourself out there and you're likable and people want to work with you, there's a very good chance you'll be successful. Because, I mean, look, your net worth is your network. You have to know people to make money.
Oh yeah, man. And like I said, that's one of the main reasons that we started this podcast and doing the Zooms and doing them live is because uh there's a lot of new people that really need the help. We see that all the time too. Like in the groups, there are people that have been in SubTo sometimes for 2 years and still haven't gotten their first deal.
100%. Yeah.
But a lot of it's just that they're just floundering, and they're not focused.
Yeah. I feel like, I guess some people see it more as entertainment, I guess. I don't know. Like I'm in it because I'm trying to work and make a legitimate business. But I guess some people just like the entertainment part. But I think eventually, hopefully, I'm praying that all these people can, even if they're in it for 2, 3 years, maybe start somewhere and get some deals. There's enough real estate for everyone to make some money from. Like definitely.
Yeah, some of them do eventually. Probably saw a few months ago, Effie got her first deal. It took her about 2 years to get it, but you know what? Like, girl put in the work, she kept showing up, and one day she raised her hand on family night and told Pace, like, "Guess what? I closed my first deal."
Awesome. I love like stories like that where people like them working their butts off and maybe sometimes not, and sometimes they start and then they get a deal. It's great. And I got my deal like, an average cold caller, they don't get their deal for the first 8, 9 months sometimes. Like I mean, I know there's all these programs where people are trying to get a deal in a week or whatever, and it's possible, but for me, it took me months and I've gotten close multiple times, but you learn from your mistakes. And I made a few mistakes in the process, and now I can learn from them and then make sure that doesn't happen again.
What kind of big projects do you have coming up? Anything special that y'all are working on?
Yeah, so I know Shad is so for no he has a program called No Excuses, and there's a dispo. He's trying to get the dispo portioning out so we can get people to JV under Dom. But I know Gordon and Shad are really trying to help people, help the community, giving back. I joined them as well, and I'm trying to give back as well, but tons of programs to try to help people. But that's like kind of I'm not really doing much with that, but I'm definitely like a part of it a little bit in a sense. But I'm gonna start probably purchasing my own investment property soon. Hopefully, some big projects. I'm gonna work with some PML people soon, get some money. Hopefully, I'm gonna be a real estate agent too. I got a lot of stuff planned for the next year. But now this business kind of kicking off, I got to make sure it stays, and I got to make sure we keep working. But it's definitely
Mhm.
other ventures, like private money lending. I'm gonna be a real estate agent, another little hustle thing. Looking at partnering people to buy investment properties too, and hopefully commercial and apartment buildings and hotels maybe one day too. So we got a lot in store. Just you can't go to that point until you start at the bottom and you have to work your way up. So I'm not quite there yet, but I promise you, hopefully one day I will be there.
Hotels are tough, man. I can tell you that from having worked a couple of those deals. The financing on those is tough, but if you can make it work, but like you said, you gotta maintain your own business first, and then you can work on building up whatever else you want.
Yeah. And I'm not like 100% sure exactly like on again apartments, commercial, RV parks. Like I know you're doing that. But it just definitely want to, expand that business. But I'm also going to stay with like my partners because they did a lot for me and I'm trying to give back. A lot of people text me all the time from after the Zooms every week and they're like asking me for advice and I love to help people and that's something I definitely like to do. I think if you help people, I think karma's a thing and you get good in return. So I definitely try to help people as much as I can. But yeah, man, we got a lot in store for the next year. Like I guarantee you, like my life from last year, to this year is completely changed. I bet from this time this year to next year, it's gonna be completely different as well. Like there's so many new opportunities that are coming up, like so many.
Well, like you said in the podcast today, as long as you keep your eye on the ball and you keep drilling down, you're gonna get it. I have no doubt in my mind about that.
Oh yeah, it's so true. Like I'm an example of it. I failed for a long time, lost potentially $1,000 in deals, but now I'm making some money, and it takes hard work. It takes failure, but it's like I said like earlier. Like I keep reiterating it. Like failure comes like once you get success and you see all the failures that happen, like you learn from it, and that happened to me. And so many other people in the community as well have failed a lot and they have, made mistakes and lost some really good deals because they may mess up a little bit. But look at them now. Most of them are higher up than they were previously. And it's just about showing up, doing the work, and, taking the little steps that are necessary to be successful.
And yeah, well, and also moving on to the next venture is probably gonna require you to be able to duplicate yourself, you know? It took you a little while to get this good, but if you wanna be able to keep your business going and trending up without you, you're gonna have to find more people and train them to be just as good, if not better than you are.
Yeah, that's definitely a difficult part. I know we have some plans with that. Like we have tons of partners, and we're trying to find the best. So that's like you said, that's totally important. But there's so many like opportunities in the world. There's so many, and you have to take advantage of what you have. Like when I first started, all I really had was Gordon in the SubTo community, and I used him like as a friend. He taught me so much, and I'm still gonna use him. And honestly, like I don't really ever imagine myself in a world where I'm not, working with him in some way, 100%. And like, for me, it's like if someone does something for me, I'm gonna do something back to them and help them. Like I love to help people, but like I need help sometimes. Like when you first start, like to anyone, you have to learn like, hey, if I can give this person value and they give me value, it's a winning relationship. And there's so many opportunities, especially if you're in SubTo, you paid 10 grand to be in it.
Yeah, well, like you said, there's just so many rock stars in there. We've had 30 of them on here. Every one of them has taught us something different, whether it was talking about wholesaling or innovations or different commercial development and private money lending or raising capital or just being a TC integrator, like whatever.
So
That's why we bring all those voices together.
I'm telling you, there's so many different ways to make money. It's unbelievable. You just got to figure out which one you like. Like you said earlier, at TC, that's, I mean, you're right. If you like doing that, you can make 6 figures a year doing that. Totally, So, and if you can be a wholesaler, you can be a PML. There's so many ways. It's unbelievable, and that's why I'm very thankful for being in this community and having everyone that I can rely on if I need help. Like all my partners, if I text them within 10 minutes, more than likely they're going to respond to me, and and if they text me and they ask me for something, I'll reach back to them within as quickly as I can. It's
Yep.
very important to have good relationships.
Most of the money I've made since I've been in the community has been more of the obscure things. It hasn't even been directly real estate related. Like I did a consulting gig for somebody. I had affiliate payouts. I had a project management. So I managed a project for somebody. Like you just never know where it's going to take you. But like you said, you have to seize the opportunities that are in front of you.
Yeah, I got lucky that my mom found like Pace and all the people. And like she gave me an opportunity, and I've really used it to my advantage. And I'm going to continue to get a lot of,
Yeah.
I'm sure, good opportunities and maybe sometimes bad opportunities too, that bad things that, happen all the time, whatever. But you got to really find the good ones and really use them to your advantage. And like it's all here, all these people, there's so many heavy hitters in this game. And we're lucky enough that, being like a phone call away or a text message away from pretty much any of them, if I'm being honest.
Yep, most of them are pretty easy, and like you said, a lot of the people that are in the groups are amazing. If you just show up to a couple of Zooms, maybe message them, you know, build that relationship, get that rapport, maybe comment on their stuff, whatever. All of a sudden, now you got a new best friend.
And people are looking to make new friends here, and it's like it's unbelievable like what it has done for me. I've met so many people who are heavy hitters in this real estate game, and it's like that's part of the reason I'm successful. It's not all me. Like I show up, I do the work, and I help them make their job easier, but they've done a lot for me too. They've taught me the ways and how to be successful and how to separate myself from other wholesalers. It's definitely a tough game, but if you know people, you can easily make good money. I'm telling you, you just gotta, like you said earlier, you have to have connections, and if you have good connections, the money is going to come your way. You can't look at the money. You have to look as the connections and the hurdles, and once you can get over those, success will come. Totally.
That was the first podcast we did was just on networking. I think in the first 5 months I was in the community, I made 300 friends. Like it's just going through and being systematic and figuring out like who's doing what, who's doing so successfully, and just getting around them.
Yeah, like honestly, for any single like I know integrator. I talk to integrator all the time. I know a guy who does land. I know a guy who's a closer. I know like anything, any single subject in real estate. I know a guy that does it. So if I have a question, I can
Yep,
literally reach out to him. Like I know PML.
same.
I know you do RV parks. I know you do too. So it's like every single person you meet who has like their own niche, you can just text them or you can just call them and ask them for help, and they'll more than likely be happy to help you.
Yeah, I mean, I try to make myself that available to people. Like, if you have my number, then it's just as simple as I'm just a text or a phone call away.
Exactly.
Well, cool, man. We're gonna start putting a bow on this, and we'll tie it up here. But is there any other advice that you would give to somebody? Any parting words of wisdom here for new investors or people watching?
Yeah. I will say it's hard, especially if you're new to investing. It's definitely challenging, but you have to be willing to accept failure. And if things happen, like as a wholesaler, a lot of things have not gone my way. I'll tell you that compared to most other wholesalers, you have to be willing to learn from it and move on, like and move forward. And if you're willing to do that, success is coming. And I always try to help people and try to be the best person I could possibly be. And if someone has a question, I always try to answer it. Or if they want to call me and ask me about something, I'll answer them. But you really have to connect with people. You really have to learn, and you have to be willing to, sometimes things happen and you just got to see it. You got to learn from it and just push forward and try new things if that one thing's not working.
Oh yeah, man, I love it. As y'all know, we try to only bring you all the best voices and the most diverse group of people so that you can really learn from the people that we bring on. If we made you think, if we made you laugh, if we brought you value, the only thing that we ask that you show up next time, that you bring a friend every Sunday afternoon, same time, same link, 4 to 6 p.m. CST. We do these. So until next time, everybody, see y'all next week.
Thank you for having me.